This right here is the ultimate Minecraft enchanting guide. You want to have that invincible armor that turns you into a literal god? Or a sword that knocks enemies back while setting them on fire? Well, then enchanting is the way to get that. But enchanting is a big topic and there's a lot of things you can do wrong, so in this guide, I'm gonna explain everything. How enchanting works in the first place, all the enchantments in the game for every single item, and I also have some special tricks for you that most players don't know, but they will help you get much better enchantments and faster. So, let's jump right into it. First of all, what do we even need to get started? Well, to be able to enchant things in Minecraft, you first of all need to build an enchantment table. This right here is the crafting recipe, and as you can also see, you will need a total of 5 diamonds, 2 for the recipe, and then another 3 for a diamond pickaxe to mine the required obsidian. Once you have the enchantment table, the next thing you need is 15 bookshelves. Also here, this is the recipe, and just in case you're curious, for all 15, you will need a total of 90 wooden planks and 45 books, which in and of themselves will need 45 leather and 135 paper. So a quick tip from my side would be, before you even start your enchanting journey, try to get a basic sugarcane, wheat, and cow farm going, so you have a lot of sugarcane to turn into paper, a lot of cows for the leather, and grain to feed them. In case you're curious on how to build a great sugarcane farm, then I already have a video on that. I'm gonna link it in the cards so you can maybe check it out later. But alright, once you have the enchanting table and the 15 bookshelves, what you're gonna do is put down the enchanting table, leave 1 block free around it, and then you will place the bookshelves like so, because you need to have at least 15 bookshelves around the enchanting table to have access to the highest level enchantments. I personally usually build 18 bookshelves because it looks nicer like this, but 15 is the bare minimum that every player should have. And just by the way, if you could leave a quick like for the video, that would help me out big time with the YouTube algorithm and get this video out to more people. So thank you so much for your support. Alright, now you have everything you need to start enchanting, so let's next talk about how you actually do that in practice. Now, when you open up your enchanting table, this right here is the UI that you see. In this spot on the left here, you enter the item that you want to enchant, for example this golden pickaxe right here, and as you will see then on the right side here, it offers you 3 random enchantments out of all the enchantments that can fit onto, in our case, a pickaxe. However, you can't just blindly take whichever you want, because enchantment is not free. Instead, you need 2 things. On the one hand, a resource called lapis lazuli. This is something that you usually find while mining, and probably until the point you have an enchantment table, you will already have some lapis. And secondly, you also need levels. Here on the right side, it shows you which total level you need to be to even access the respective enchantment. And then on the left, you can see how many of your levels you need to quote-unquote pay in order to buy it. In the first lot, we have a low-level enchantment. This only costs 1 level and 1 lapis. The mid-level one costs 2, and for the high-level enchantment in tier 3 here, you need 3 levels and 3 lapis lazuli to put that onto your pickaxe. We're just gonna do that right now, and what we see right here is, we got the fortune 3 that it said it would give us, but we received a second enchantment, efficiency 4. How can that be? Well, let me explain that right now. There's a certain system in the game that's called Enchantability, which essentially means how likely it is that you will get additional free enchantments. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail on the enchantability mechanics because honestly, I don't think it is all too important. Just for completion's sake, in very basic words, what it means is, depending on the material that your item is made out of, the chance to get these additional free enchantments will be higher. The only little exception here would be, if you want to create netherite gear, then it's actually smarter to first upgrade your diamond stuff into netherite and then enchant it, because netherite has higher enchantability than diamonds, increasing your chances of getting multiple enchantments. But then again, in most scenarios you only want to enchant your diamond stuff anyway and don't bother with the rest, so I would say it's more nice to know than anything else. What is important to know though, very much so, is the thing that I'm gonna tell you next, and this is the part where most Minecraft players waste tons of resources and levels by doing it wrong, so let me tell you exactly how to do it right. See, in most cases, you have a very clear idea of which enchantment you want. For example, you have a diamond pickaxe and you want to have Fortune 3 and Unbreaking on it. Now, the mistake that many players will make is that instead of enchanting the diamond pickaxe, they will spend tons of levels and lapis on enchanting books, hoping to eventually get that Fortune 3 and Unbreaking enchantment to then put it onto their pickaxe afterwards. But in reality, this is actually super inefficient because books can hold every enchantment in the game, making the chance of getting one specific one very low. Whereas if you enchant an item directly, then the game will only ever offer you the enchantments that can fit onto said item. So if you, let's say, want a Fortune pickaxe, then the chance of getting Fortune by enchanting the pickaxe directly is infinitely higher than the chance of getting Fortune on a book. So here is exactly how you enchant right. First, go to your enchanting table and put the pickaxe on it. You can now see which enchantments the game offers. If your Fortune 3 is in the list, then perfect, just take it and you have your pickaxe. But if not, then just take a worthless pickaxe like a wood or stone one, give it the cheapest enchantment that is offered, because then it will re-roll the available enchantments. So you will essentially get a second chance to roll the Fortune 3 for your diamond pickaxe. And then you can just do that over and over and over again until the Fortune 3 shows up for your main pickaxe. This way, you only spend one level and one lapis per enchantment reroll, instead of what most other people do by just putting the level 3 enchantments on tons of books, wasting resources. However, there's another little trick that makes this rerolling even easier. Remember how I said that we need at least 15 bookshelves around the enchanting table to gain access to the maximum level enchantments in the first place? Well, we can kinda use this to trick the enchanting table a bit. If we don't like the enchantments on offer, then instead of enchanting the stone pickaxe right away, what we can also do is put down a couple of blocks in between the enchanting table and the bookshelves, because this way we make it that the enchantment table cannot quote-unquote see some of these bookshelves anymore, which will then accordingly reduce the level of the enchantments on offer. And by doing that, it sometimes happens that the game offers completely different enchantments. It doesn't always work, but at least it's worth a try. And if you want to do this in style, then you can also build a little piston construction with which you can raise and lower those blocks automatically. Okay, I might have just made it sound like enchanting books is a super duper dumb idea, but that's not true. It's actually one of the best and most important things you can do. Why is that now? Well, of course, having one enchantment of your choice on a tool is great, but ideally, you want to have multiple enchantments, right? You want to have that armor with protection and unbreaking and mending and everything, and the only way to get all the perfect enchantments on one item is by using books, and here is exactly how you do it. First of all, you will have to build an anvil. This is how you make it. Just keep in mind that it uses iron blocks, and each iron block consists out of 9 iron ingots, so for an anvil, you will need quite a bunch of iron, round about half a stack. Now, what can you do with the anvil? Well, first of all, you can use it to repair enchanted items. Just put the item that you want to repair into here, and then more of the material that this item was made of in the slot next to it, which will then cost you a bunch of levels, but repair the item and it keeps the enchantments intact, where if you just normally repair stuff in your inventory, the enchantments would get lost. Just one very important tip when you repair stuff on an anvil: do not waste your resources by doing it wrong. Here's what I mean. If you want to repair an item, let's say this gold shovel right here, then what you can do is put it onto the anvil and use gold ingots to repair it, in which case, for every gold ingot you put onto the anvil, your shovel will regain a quarter of its durability, or in other words, to repair any type of item in the game, you need to put 4 of that material onto the anvil, but this could waste you a lot of resources, and there's actually a smarter way to go about it. See, instead of putting the material directly on the anvil, you can also take a second, intact copy of the same item and put that onto the anvil instead to instantly fully repair the item. In case of our shovel, that means you only need 1 gold ingot to build another shovel, and that will instantly fully repair our shovel, making it much cheaper than putting 4 gold ingots in. And only for those items that take a lot of resources, for example a chestplate from an armor, only in that case repair it with the material, because a chestplate needs 8 materials to be crafted, so if you wanted to repair it with a second chestplate, you would have to spend 8 materials for the second chestplate, but that's not what you're here for, so let's talk about how to actually use the anvil for enchantments. See, just like with the repairing, what you could also do on an anvil is put an item on it, and then in the second slot, put a book with an enchantment, which will then put the enchantment that was previously on the book onto the item. This works with every enchantable item and the corresponding enchantment on a book. Alternatively, you could also place 2 of the same items with enchantments on it to put these enchantments together, so this way you can stack multiple enchantments on the same item. For example, for our Fortune 3 pickaxe, you can take it, put it onto the anvil together with an Unbreaking book, and then you will get a Fortune 3 Unbreaking 3 pickaxe. Want to make that more efficient? Well, you can take the same pickaxe and put it on the anvil with an Efficiency book, and now you have a Fortune, Unbreaking, and Efficiency pickaxe. This way, you step by step create the perfect item. But that's still not all. Another important feature is that you can level up your enchantments with the anvil. For example, if you have 2 items and both of them have Unbreaking 2 on them, you can put them together on the anvil, and then this will combine the 2 Unbreaking 2s into 1 Unbreaking 3. Just one very important thing to keep in mind, every time you use the anvil with an item, this will cost you levels, and the more often you put the same item onto the anvil, the higher the cost will be. So you can't infinitely put the same item onto the anvil. In fact, if you want to have, let's say, that perfect armor piece with protection and unbreaking and mending and all whatnot, then the worst thing you could do is take the armor, put the first enchantment onto it, take the armor, put the second enchantment onto it, take the armor, put the third enchantment onto it. This will waste tons of levels, so here is how you do that right. Let's say, for example, you want to have a chestplate with Unbreaking, Protection, Mending, and Thorns. 4 different enchantments. As I just said, the worst idea would be to take all these 4 enchanted books and put them onto the armor individually. Instead, what you want to do is, first of all, enchant the armor directly and see what you can get. Only then will you go to the anvil and finish your job with the books. Take 2 of the books and put those together on the anvil to create 1 book that has 2 enchantments on it, and then do the same thing with the other 2 books, making it so that you have 2 magic books with 2 enchantments each, and then put your armor on the anvil with the first book, and then repeat that with the second. This way, you also get the same 4 enchantments onto the armor, but it will save you an incredible amount of experience. That not only goes for armor, with just an example, that goes for every item that you want to have multiple enchantments on. Now, when you do this method, there is one very important thing that you need to keep in mind, or you're just going to waste tons of levels. Whenever you combine 2 items on an anvil, then before you take the enchanted item out, try to swap the positions of the 2 initial items and see if you can make it cheaper this way. In some situations, as you can also see in the background right here, you're already gonna save a bunch of levels. But that's not it. When you do it the way that we just showed, by combining books first and then applying them to our items, then you also gotta make sure to always combine 1 expensive enchantment together with a cheaper one like Mending or Unbreaking on a book. Don't take 2 expensive enchantments on one and 2 cheap enchantments on the other book. Split them out evenly to reduce the overall level cost. So yeah, we now know how to use the anvil to put multiple beautiful enchantments on the same item. However, there is one more tool in the enchantment toolbox that we haven't talked about yet, and this is actually crazy underrated. I don't know why so many players never use it, and that would be the grindstone. So let me show you why this is such an insane life hack. To put it very simply, the grindstone is essentially the opposite of the anvil. You can put any enchanted item onto it, and then it will just grind away the enchantments, leaving you with a normal item again. But when you remove the enchantments, you actually gain a bit of experience back from that. Now, why is removing enchantments so good now? Well, first of all, similar to the anvil, you can also use the grindstone to repair your enchanted tools. Main difference here being that, on the anvil, you spend levels to repair the enchanted items, but the enchantments stay on the item, whereas on the grindstone, you can repair the item, but it will lose its enchantments. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, if you can't afford to repair on an anvil, or you simply just don't want to do that, then doing it on a grindstone instead of the normal inventory variant is actually much better, because while in both situations you lose the enchantments, if you do it on the grindstone, you will actually get some levels back. But to be fair, that's just a little side fact. The much more important use case would be this here. Well, remember what we initially said? If you want to enchant an item, then it's smarter to enchant the item directly instead of using books right from the start. Well, with the grindstone, you can essentially remove errors. Let's take our example with the armor from the anvil again. Let's just say you got a second enchantment at the same time, and that is something that you didn't want on your armor. Essentially, this would ruin the armor piece for you. That's why most players like to keep it safe and only use books to make sure they only get the enchantments that they want. But there's really no need to, because in case that happens, you can just put the armor onto the grindstone and try again. You don't lose anything, and you even get parts of the experience back. Okay, I know I've been talking a lot and I'm really sorry, but I have one last final tip to share that I really haven't heard anyone talk about yet. Remember how earlier in the video we said that you can re-roll the enchantments that the enchanting table offers you by simply putting a cheap enchantment on a useless item? Well, in that example, we used a stone pickaxe for this. But now that we learned about the grindstone, there's actually a much better way to do this. See, when we earlier talked about the enchantability mechanic, we found out that depending on which material your item is made of, there is a higher chance to get additional free enchantments whenever you put it on the enchanting table. And as this table here clearly shows, golden items and armor have by far the highest enchantability. Now, what does this mean for us? Well, instead of using stone tools to re-roll the enchantments, it is actually much better to use gold items whenever we can. With their higher enchantability, we have a much higher chance of getting additional enchantments on it, which means when we then throw this dummy item onto the grindstone, we actually get more levels back because there were more enchantments on it. Alright, you now know how the entire enchantment process works and how to most efficiently do that. But you might be wondering, which enchantments do I even want on my items? So how about we go over all the enchantments in the game now. I'm going to explain to you what each and every one of them does and tell you which are the best. Starting out, I want to do with two universal enchantments. These basically can go on any item out there, and that would be on the one hand, Unbreaking. This one is pretty self-explanatory. It makes it that the durability of your item doesn't go down as fast. If you have something that you want to use long term, definitely put Unbreaking 3 onto it. And then the second universal enchantment, and in my opinion, probably the best and most convenient one in the game, would be Mending. This one makes it that whenever you gain experience, that experience is automatically gonna repair your equipped items without you having to do anything. This way, you don't have to spend tons of levels on the anvil, and you can effectively use your favorite items forever. Only little problem is that Mending can't be accessed through the enchanting table. Instead, you have to find an enchanted mending book out in the world, or if you get lucky, you can also find a librarian villager who you can buy it from. And by the way, if you want to learn more about villager trading in general, then I already have a full playlist of videos on that. I have a guide on how to make a villager breeder, how to create a trading hall, and turn every villager into librarians so you can gain access to all the enchantments in the game. I'm going to try to put you all these videos in the card so you can check them out later if you like, but definitely make sure to also leave a sub for the channel to not miss any future tutorials. Welcome to the crew! The next category of enchantments I want to talk about are all the enchantments related to armor, and starting out here I want to do with those that help you protect yourself, those being protection, blast protection, fire protection, and projectile protection, where the normal protection is just universal across the board, whereas the other three are specific towards certain damage types, and very important, you can only ever have one of these four on the same item at the same time, so they're exclusive. My personal recommendation is just put normal protection onto everything because that does the job just fine. Only if you have a specific scenario where you know you will be exposed to specifically only one type of damage, then you might be able to build yourself a specific armor set just for that. Outside of that, just go with normal protection. Up next, we have Thorns. This enchantment goes onto all armor pieces too, and it makes it that whenever you take damage from an enemy, that enemy takes a bit of damage themselves. It is quite funny, but if you don't have mending, then I wouldn't recommend putting that on your armor because it will reduce the durability even faster. On helmets, you have access to two special enchantments, those being Respiration, which makes it that you have more breath underwater, very nice, would definitely recommend that, as well as Aqua Affinity. This makes it that you can mine blocks much faster while being underwater. Perfect for any underwater cave exploration. Then another cool enchantment on your pants would be Swift Sneak. This makes it that while you're sneaking, you're actually moving faster, and on top of that, it also increases your crawling speed, so perfect if you want to go crawl mining for those diamonds. But also here, this is considered a treasure enchantment, meaning you can't get it from the enchanting table. Instead, you have to find it on enchanted books, and those books can only show up in ancient city loot chests. As for the boots, the last piece of armor, there is quite a bunch. On the one hand, we have Feather Falling. This specifically reduces fall damage, absolute highest priority, because we all know how deadly fall damage can be, right? But it also has access to another treasure enchantment called Soul Speed. This makes it that you can move faster on soul sand in the nether, and this enchantment can either be found on enchanted books in Bastion Remnant chests, or, if you get lucky, you could barter with piglins in the nether, and sometimes they will give you a soul speed book. And then finally, there are two more enchantments for boots, those being Depth Strider and Frostwalker. Depth Strider just makes it that you move through water much faster, definitely one of my favorites, whereas Frostwalker allows you to walk over water by turning the water under you into ice. I personally think it's not all that useful in the overworld, but it has a hidden additional feature which makes it that with Frostwalker boots, you can walk on magma blocks without taking damage. If you explore the nether or you want to build a gold farm, then I would highly recommend getting that on your boots. It's a treasure enchantment, and you can find it in jungle temples, strongholds, or you could get it by fishing or trading with a librarian. So much for the armor. Let's next talk about weapons, starting out with the sword, where the first and most prominent class of enchantments would be those that increase your damage, like for example Sharpness, that increases damage across the board, Smite, that gives you an even bigger damage bonus, but only against undead enemies, like zombies or skeletons, and thirdly, Bane of Arthropods. This is a specific damage bonus only against spider-like creatures and silverfish. All of these three are also exclusive, meaning if you choose one of them on your weapon, you can't use the other two. Oh yeah, and by the way, these three enchantments are not only available for swords, but also for maces, spears, and axes. But when it comes to the axes, then in Java Edition, the only way to get these combat enchantments onto the axe is with a book and an anvil. They will not appear at the enchantment table. Up next, we would have a Fire Aspect, which is an enchantment that sets the enemy on fire if you hit them. It sounds cool, but the damage over time it deals is really nothing to write home about. Knockback, which, as the name suggests, knocks the enemy further back. Perfect if you want to hunt down creepers, so they don't just instantly set themselves off next to you. Looting, which makes it that whenever you take out an enemy with your sword, you will get more drops out of them. And finally, Sweeping Edge. This makes it that when you sweep through multiple enemies at the same time with your sword, that sweeping damage is going to be increased. Of course though, Sweeping Edge only exists in Java Edition because of this whole mechanic with hitting multiple enemies with one swipe that doesn't exist in Bedrock. Oh yeah, and looting isn't sword exclusive anymore, that can now also be put on the spear, as well as the fact that Fire Aspect goes on the spear as well as the mace too. The next weapon to talk about would be the mace. This one, as we just said, can have Bane of Arthropods, Smite and Sharpness too, but it also comes with its own 2 enchantments for damage increase, those being Density and Breach. Density increases your damage the higher your fall height is, and Breach makes it that you ignore parts of the enemy armor. All of these damage enchantments are exclusive, meaning you have to decide only for one on your mace. And then finally, there's another mace enchantment called Windburst. This one, as the name suggests, creates a windburst when you hit with the mace. Windburst, though, is a treasure enchantment, and the only way to get it is from Trial Chamber, so keep that one in mind. Next, let's talk about the Trident. This one has some very special enchantments, for example, Channeling. If there's a thunderstorm going on outside and you hit an enemy with the trident, then you wield the power of a Greek god by summoning a lightning strike onto that enemy. Very cool, but exclusive with the next one called Riptide, with which you can launch yourself with the trident at the enemy when you're underwater or in the rain. You can only choose one of these 2 enchantments, so pick wisely. And then finally, we have Impaling, which increases your damage, as well as Loyalty, that makes it that the trident returns to you. However, also here, Loyalty is exclusive with Riptide, so keep that one in mind. And then lastly, let's also talk about the newest melee weapon in the game, and that would be of course the Spear. To make it real quick, also the Spear has access to Sharpness, Smite, Bane of Arthropods, Looting, Knockback, all that good stuff that the other weapons have too. The only Spear exclusive enchantment would be Lunge, and what this one does is basically the same thing as Riptide for the Trident, just on land. It lunges you forward when you do a jab attack, helping you to cross the gap to your opponent. Just a quick side note here, doing this makes you hungry faster, and it also consumes a bit of durability on your spear. As for the ranged weapons, we have the bow, where you increase the damage with the power enchantment. You can set enemies on fire using the flame enchantment. Punch is the knockback version for the bow, and the last one is a specific bow enchantment called Infinity. This one makes it that you don't consume arrows when firing. However, the problem with this is that it is exclusive with Mending, meaning you have the choice between no ammo consumption but the bow wears down over time, or have the bow be essentially indestructible but still use ammo. This is a hotly debated topic, so why don't you let me know in the comments down below which of the 2 you prefer. As for the crossbow, Quick Charge makes you, charge the crossbow quicker, definite recommendation from my side. And then you can choose between Piercing and Multi-Shot. Multi-Shot fires 3 arrows at the same time in a little cone in front of you, and Piercing makes it that 1 arrow can go through enemies and hit multiple enemies if they're standing in a row. Also here, these 2 are exclusive, but I can imagine there are situations for both of them. And last but not least, let's also talk about tool enchantments, something that is actually very important, where first of all, we have 3 enchantments that you can put on every tool in the game, those being Efficiency, essentially allowing you to destroy blocks faster, Fortune, which increases the chance to get more drops out of a block. This one is incredibly important on pickaxes, so you can get much more ores and diamonds. And finally, you have Silk Touch, which makes it that if you destroy your block, it won't break, but instead you will get the block itself in your inventory. Isn't honestly used all that much, but I still think you should have some Silk Touch tools in your arsenal. And finally, we have the Fishing Rod with Luck of the Sea. This one makes it that you have a higher chance of actually getting good stuff out of the water, and Lure, which makes fish bite more frequently. And if you want to have a dedicated guide focused on only how to perfect the enchantments for your armor, then you can find that right here. See you next time, and until then, craft well!